A lot of the discourse surrounding the Toronto Raptors this offseason has involved contracts. I mean, Fred VanVleet was given a lucrative deal from the Houston Rockets and ended up leaving the Toronto Raptors with nothing in return. Pascal Siakam talks about him pick up every second day about whether or not the team should give him a max extension. They should trade him away. They should wait until the trade deadline. Some people are saying, hey, play out the season and then maybe he gets a supermax deal, right? No one really knows what's going to happen in the future of Pascal Siakam at this point, but one guy that has equal importance, it feels like, to the Toronto Raptors, at least in terms of making a decision, is OG Anunoby, as he's also a guy that could be an unrestricted free agent come next summer, and we have an update from Shams The Athletic in terms of what type of contract, what type of money he's going to be getting out there on the open market. So let's just dive straight into it. It's basically in the report yesterday where we talked, Shams focused on Pascal Siakam, that was the coverage of our video yesterday, but discussed OG Anunoby there a little bit, and basically gave an indication in terms of the open market value for OG, which might surprise some Toronto Raptors fans. It's basically OG Anunoby is expected to command over $30 million per season on his next contract, according to Shams, and this is something, as said, it might surprise Raptors fans, as OG has been the sort of fourth, fifth option in the offense for the Toronto Raptors over the past few years. He's a guy, elite defender, efficient, he puts up solid stats. I mean, let's not take anything away from it from OG Anunoby. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.9 steals per night. Efficiency, 39% from behind the three-point line, 48% from the field. OG Anunoby has established himself as outside of that role player sort of echelon. Even Mikal Bridges discussed it on a podcast this summer. OG Anunoby's one of those guys that was sort of a role player there for a while, but has emerged beyond that, but still has that reputation as a guy that's a 3-and-D dude, an elite 3-and-D dude, rather than an actual star in the NBA. That's how we sort of looked at it, and that's probably how most Raptors fans view him. So to see the $30 million per year number get thrown out there as a potential sort of market value for OG Anunoby, it might be a little bit jarring. But when you factor in what OG Anunoby brings on the defensive end, right, his ability to space the floor, do his thing out there, makes sense. I mean, you have guys like Jeremy Grant, Tobias Harris, Chris Middleton making more money than that annually. So OG Anunoby getting around that salary is something that definitely makes sense. However, given the context of the current Toronto Raptors roster, because personally on the open market in a vacuum, I think without a doubt, OG Anunoby is worth that money. I'd want to see him back, and regardless of anything plays out, I want to see OG Anunoby on the Toronto Raptors and pay him what he's worth so he stays with the team. Don't let him walk for nothing, whatever the heck you end up going to do. But OG Anunoby's worth that $30 million per year. But the questions come in for the Toronto Raptors when you factor in the Pascal's got to get paid. Gary Trent Jr.'s unrestricted free agent come next season, opted into his player option, and then we'll see where that ends up going for him, as we don't know if he's going to get extended either. We have Jakob Poeltl making $20 million plus per year. Scotty Barnes' future extensions are incoming. Boucher's on a decent deal. I mean, probably would have to get off of his salary for overloading the top of our roster with lots of money. Precious Achiuwa's a guy you got to factor in future salary considerations for. I mean, there's a lot of money moves that the Toronto Raptors have to make and figure out with this roster in order to see, like, the Toronto Raptors weren't that successful last season. They didn't win a lot of games. They're a mid-level team in the Eastern Conference, so to run it back without Fred VanVleet and lock in this current core group of players, there are questions regarding that whole situation. OG Anunoby making roughly $30 million per year is something to factor in. More details regarding his whole situation is basically that Siakam and Gary Trent Jr., who are extension eligible, will become unrestricted free agents next summer if they do not sign deals before then. The Raptors could offer OG Anunoby an extension in October, but is capped around $117 million per year over 4 seasons. So a number that would likely be easily surpassed in free agency. So he can also become an unrestricted free agent next summer if he declines his $19.9 million option. Given the fact that it seems like he'll be easily surpassed, right? OG Anunoby's declining. He's becoming an unrestricted free agent next summer if he doesn't sign an extension. And we see that sort of extension number. It's capped off below the $30 million per year annually, just basically right at it. Not that mental math focus, but it's literally 29 basically on average per year for OG Anunoby at that number, 29.25 or something. So basically, OG Anunoby, if you want to extend him, if you offer him that max extension, right, it's going to be $29 million per year. That's a lot of money to factor in. Personally, again, I think OG Anunoby's worth it, but he might not even accept that. And you have to sort of factor in the risk of him declining his extension, going into open market, going into free agency, and hoping he can get something bigger out there with the rising cap, with everything that's been going on in terms of contracts being handed out on the open market. You got to factor in those decisions, and it's why Masai Ujiri, it's why Bobby Webster have been hesitant to pull the trigger. I mean, every player on the Toronto Raptors has been thrown out in trade rumors over the past couple months, over the past, really since the trade deadline, but they haven't been able to pull the trigger because the offers we've been receiving are absolute garbage. I mean, we heard the DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin, and draft capital for Pascal. That's nowhere near his actual value in a vacuum. I mean, the Raptors would be degrading there substantially if they end up accepting that package. So, Masai Ujiri's just kind of waiting. He's playing things out, but, if Pascal Siakam's eligible for roughly $40 million, $40 million, let's not factor in a supermax. Let's not think about a Jaylen Brown super deal that the Celtics forward just ended up signing last offseason. If he just signs a regular max extension, and it's only a few $1 million per year more than OG Anunoby, are we sure it makes sense to deal away Pascal over OG? And I've seen a lot of people in our comment section talk about, hey, the timelines, this, OG fits better. OG hasn't been the number one option on a team, and maybe he could develop into that type of guy with the proper opportunity under a Darko Rajakovic system. I'm not ruling it out by any means, but if you're thinking about trades, if you're thinking about deals, and it seems like the Raptors have gone the route of likely offering this deal to OG Anunoby or him landing a bigger contract next summer, betting on OG over Pascal, given how all the trade talks have sort of escalated in recent weeks. But are we sure it makes more sense to go the route of an OG Anunoby than Pascal? Personally, I made it known on the pods. If we had to decide between the two, I'd be Team Pascal here at this point, but I don't know. It's difficult to say. Personally, I think we just bite the bullet, sign both of these guys, extend both of these guys as soon as possible, have them locked under your team, and then other teams that could potentially acquire Pascal and OG Anunoby, they'd have those guys under locks. They'd be under wraps for future seasons, so the Raptors would be able to have more leverage in these trade discussions. We wouldn't be able to get finessed by the Atlanta Hawks, the New York Knicks, whoever the heck we're chatting with, and we could come to the table with not the assurance, not the risk of having our guys be in flight risk come next off season. So personally, while I would choose Pascal over OG, even if it costs a little bit more money in terms of an extension, I want to bring him back. Go into the luxury tax if you have to. Have that asset locked in long term so you have more trade chips to play with come this year's trade deadline, come next free agency if things don't work out with the current roster. Because as much as people bagged on him, Fred VanVleet left for nothing. Having OG, Pascal, Gary Trent Jr., all those guys potentially leave for nothing too would be devastating for this organization. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this whole OG Anunoby situation. Do you think he should get that $30 million per year contract? Let me know in the comment section below. But folks, you guys are best for making this far. If you made it this far into the video, definitely hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me, but you guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.